Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Crimer Beer House for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The beer house was started in 1982 by the Crimer family. Since that time, they have become a Cincinnati favorite. If you're looking for an incredible meal and an incredible setting, you have to try Crimer's Beer House down on Route 128 in Cleves, Ohio.
Welcome to Strong Dads. Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson and
Kyle Crawford.
Kyle. How are you, man?
I'm awesome. Glad to be back doing another episode today.
Yeah. How's 2020 treating you?
2020. Well, if this weather would figure out what the heck it's doing, it's cold one week, warm next week, and I'm excited. We're in a new decade, right? New decade.
Yeah.
I'm feeling younger and
You're feeling younger.
I'm feeling good, ready to go.
I'm feeling a little closer to the grave with each decade. Man, I'm glad you're feeling younger.
I'm feeling good. No.
That's good. Good. All right, so we have an interesting show today, and Strong Dads, you're probably at first hearing might be offended in a way because we're going to be calling out a lot of us, including ourselves. We always think it's just as important to throw each other under the bus as it is all of you listeners out there. But today, as we are walking into 2020, we really want to talk about the mask that we wear, right? Your identity and what you try to project out as an identity. And it speaks a lot about who we are as people. It also speaks about our insecurities, weaknesses, and those kinds of things. So we all have a little bit of a facade. And I want to just say right from the get-go, if you don't think that you do, you're the guy I need to be talking to. Right?
Go look in the mirror. See that mask.
All of us do, just because behind us we all have a history that creates lots of different components that make us up, and a lot of those are based in fears and insecurities. So we're going to unmask this conversation a little bit. Yeah, hey, how about that? Yeah. And so bear with us on the conversation. We're going to have some fun with it. Also, just talking about our own challenges and struggles with the mask, and hopefully we'll have something that'll reach out to you. So Kyle, how about let's hit some sponsors?
For sure, yeah. So definitely Strong Dad wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency in Bright, Indiana for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The Mansfield Insurance Agency was established in 1981 and have been dedicated to individuals and businesses in Bright, Indiana, serving the clients throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So check out Mansfield Insurance Agency for all your insurance needs.
All right, very good. And so we also want to thank Crimer's Beer House. Thanks those guys for just getting behind us and continuing to do what they do. The Crimers started back in 1982 by the Crimer family. Since that time, they've become a Cincinnati favorite. If you are looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, you have to try Crimer's Beer House out over on Route 128 outside of Cleves, Ohio. And we probably should mention they got a really cool urinal.
The Porta-John is awesome.
Yeah. That's good.
We talked about it in another episode.
Yeah, go back to about 2 or 3 episodes ago, and you'll hear all about the urinal down at Crimer's. All right, very good. So, are you who you look like? I hope not. Dude, you probably need a mask or something.
That's not very nice.
That's not very nice.
It's not very nice.
You don't play well
I have
with
hurt
others.
feelings. You got a hurt feelings report here at the Rock Solid Families? I got to file one right now.
Oh, man. What kind of mask? What are some things that you feel like you maybe have hidden behind or maybe you don't want everybody to know, so you conceal? You got a little concealer on your cheeks right now, right?
I got to get my notebook, and I got a long list of this. On this podcast, on our show, I talk a lot about my profession, what I do as a fireman, and in preparing for this, you had actually made reference to men and construction workers and guys who have like the manly man jobs, and how in those arenas, in those professions, how a lot of times you don't want to show a side of weakness, and you don't want to kind of humble yourself and say, well, there is some things I can't do. And in that, with my profession as a fireman, I spent a third of my life with the exact same people, and I'll be honest with you, there's guys that don't know that I love Jesus, and that's that's hard for me to say, but it's also it's a fact. There's a lot of guys that I work with. There's 350 something odd firemen that work for the city of Dayton that I work with, and I would say 349 of them have no clue I even do this podcast.
Yeah.
And
you need to start doing a better job of pumping it out through the ranks. Come on.
Yes. And it's one of those things where we, as believers in Christ, we're not called to hide it. And in fact, it's pretty clear we're supposed to put it like a lamp out on the nightstand. Like it's supposed to be something very visible for other people to see. And I'm not sure if it's that whole cliche of you're not supposed to bring religion or politics into the work. Mm-hmm. If that's something, the fire service is something completely different, because I do spend 24 hours around the clock with the same people. We do talk about politics. We do talk about faith and religion. But I'll be the first one to tell you it's not something that's always very evident for the guys around me. So I would say it's definitely a big mask that I try and put on. I kind of walk the walk and talk the talk of firemen, where we'll sit around the kitchen table and there's nothing that you're not allowed to talk about at the kitchen table.
Right.
And it's a struggle, because those conversations don't point to Jesus and don't show my life as an example of who Christ is in my life. And if I'm going to sit here and make the claim that Christ is the most important thing in my life, that should be something that is pretty evident for other people to see. So I would say that's my biggest mask that I put on. Essentially it's the mask of my profession, and not Christ, and living that out in my profession. So,
and as I'm sitting here hearing you, I might think that that's more of your regular face, the face at work, and it's a Christian mask that you put on.
Yeah.
When you're at church or whatever, I guess it could go both ways, and depending on the setting or the arena that you're playing in at that time. So I think part of what you're getting to there is the idea that you struggle with that, I struggle with that. We all have those challenges, and part of this is not to point our finger at all you strong dads out there. It's to acknowledge yourself. Yeah. We need to acknowledge ourselves in terms of the mask that we wear and what we need to do about it. Like there's terms like hypocrite, right, that come into play here, and the contradiction, two-face, pseudo this, pseudo that, phonies, all of these different words come into play. And I've never met a person that would be proud of being a phony, right? Yeah. I mean, that's an insult, no matter what population you're talking to.
For sure.
So these are the things that we're trying to be true and authentic, trying to be real strong dads. But we struggle. Oh, okay? Yeah. I mean, and again, if you don't think you do, you just think of the simple things, like there are certain clothes I don't wear, right? Because I don't want that to look a certain way. And, my wife teases me that most of my clothes are pretty drab looking, like I got a lot of khaki this, and I got a lot of flannel this, and, there's been times where she's brought home a bright colored shirt or whatever. I'm like, I'm not wearing that thing, and really what I'm really saying is, that's a mask I'm not ready to put on right there, right? I don't want to expose that side of it, And so we all, whether it's the clothing we wear or how we present ourselves, there's always something that we're trying to protect, whether an image that we like and we want to keep it rolling, or one that we're trying to avoid. Yeah, right?
Yeah. Well, go ahead, share a little bit about maybe some of the masks that you feel like you kind of put on sometimes.
So most of the time, our deep-seated mask, or the thick mask that's hard to take off, the one that we don't want anybody to know, are the things that we are insecure about or that we have a fear of. And I've shared on this show before, but I think it's worth mentioning that, I've struggled over the years with an anxiety disorder. And it's one of those things that made me feel very inferior in a lot of ways, especially when I was younger and I didn't understand it. And I would be like, man, one day I'd be ready to come out and take on the world. And the next day it just it wasn't in me. And I would feel like it wouldn't take much for anybody to just kind of knock me over. And it really affected how I dealt in relationships and that kind of thing. And so But I did not want people to know that I struggled with this anxiety. Alcohol was very good at helping to cover that up. So typically, I wanted 3 beers in me before I was going to go out to a party. It would just help.
Liquid courage?
Yeah, it would just help kind of soften that a little bit. And then obviously the anxiety got crazy for me and kind of just blew me apart. But one of the biggest freeing things that happened was when I finally said, I have a challenge with this. I have a mental illness, to just kind of bring it right to the surface.
Yeah.
And once I did that, it was just like, okay, you know what? if somebody else has a problem with that, that's their problem. I'm going to deal with the problem.
Yeah.
And that was pretty freeing in a lot of ways. And it really has changed the course of life in many different areas for me. So just hiding behind that anxiety situation. And I'd like to, people say, well, what's causing the anxiety? I'll be honest with you, like a mental illness of sort, you can't always put your finger on it.
Sure.
You just are predisposed. Like there would be some days that I could take on the world. And then there would be other days where I'd wake up in the middle of the night in panic attacks, and I went to bed completely fine and perfect. I had no clue. Like nothing was wrong. Nothing was on my mind. So that spoke more to the illness of it versus I wasn't handling something properly in my life or something like that. So anyway, it took a lot for me to dig in and really learn more about the condition versus just general anxiety due to a situation.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are some basics of that you and I both kind of expose about ourselves. This is something, I got a list. I created a list.
I like it.
Okay. And I created a list. I've been working with people and men for over 30 years now in counseling and coaching aspects. And I've come to find what men do as mask. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I see signs or traits that I go, oh yeah, well, there's probably something behind this.
Sure.
Okay. And again, this is not inclusive of everything, but these are 10 that kind of pop out to me.
Sure.
And I'd like to run through them a little bit because they might smack some of our listeners right in the face. Like, oh yeah, that might be me. Yeah. Okay. The first one, they may talk too much. Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah. This might be the guy who's just like never shuts his mouth. Always running it. Always. And when I say may talk too much, a lot of times they're either talking a lot of trash or they're like trying to constantly impress people with their knowledge. Yeah. Like the know-it-all.
Well, this is kind of funny because all through my training and getting to where I'm at now in my profession, they always tell you when you're going through like the stations to basically the practical stations to prove that you can actually professionally perform something. They tell you if you're not sure, just keep talking, and that way you don't give the instructor a chance to ask you a question to really kind of find your weakness. So they actually teach us to just keep talking, so that way the instructor never gets a chance to butt in there.
Talk in circles and just confuse the heck out of the listener. Yeah, so a lot of guys they'll just run, and I've always thought, the guy that I really need to pay most attention to is the guy that talks very little. Because there's probably, and when they do talk, you're like, oh, yeah. And I know several of those men in my life. It's like, they don't say much, but when they do,
you listen.
Man, I'm taking all of it in.
Yeah.
So another thing is, and this is a real challenge, we deal with this in marriage all the time in our work here. They may have difficulty admitting their wrongs.
That pride.
Yeah. Like, they don't own it. They constantly steer away from it. Maybe quick to point out other people's wrongs, but they won't own their wrongs.
Yeah.
That's a mask. There's something deeper behind that they're afraid of being exposed.
Yeah.
So not owning it and admitting the wrongs. How about this one, kind of coupled with that? They may be quick to blame or steer the responsibility back to someone else. Yep. So that idea that, we've just asked a couple of guys to go do a job and they never step up. They're always, well, you can do that, or you can do that, and they never really kind of own any of the work. They just kind of sit back and let everybody else take the responsibility for things.
Yeah.
And, I've been guilty of that one,
Yeah.
right? Gosh, when you're at any church setting or anything, they're always looking for volunteers.
Always.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll let those guys do that. I'll step back.
Yeah.
And so when guys have a common sit back and do the armchair quarterbacking.
Oh, that Monday morning quarterback. We
Yeah.
talk about this all the time at work. It's so easy to say, well, that guy did it wrong. And then, you show up and we all have flaws. I mean, and sometimes it's so much easier to point out other people's flaws and be like, well, mine aren't as bad. And you start to
Right.
kind of do that comparison that, comparing the two together. And it's like, that's so silly. If you got flaws and you have things you need to work on, like, that you can point the blame all you want, but what did you play into that? Did you help fix those problems? Did you kind of pick up the pieces behind that person?
Yeah.
It's so easy to point those fingers, and sometimes it takes a different kind of person to really take a step back. It takes that strong man to take a step back and be like, I had a part in that.
Yeah. So that Monday morning quarterback and stuff, and that idea of just skating away from doing the real work. Easy to do. How about this? Always quick with an excuse.
Yep.
Always got a reason for why things didn't work out.
Yep.
Always got something to put into place, of why they are where they are. Yep. Quick with the excuses. As a dad, man, I work on that all the time with my kids. When something's not been done that we've asked him to do, excuses are not acceptable. Right. I used to have I still have a friend. Not used to have a friend. I still have a friend, and he always says, all excuses are equal. In other words, they all get you to the same place.
Yeah.
They get you to the place of not owning it and doing the job.
Yeah.
So,
And similar to what I was talking about with my mask, when I'm at work, the excuses are always there for me. It's always, if I try and share my feelings and share my faith with people, I'll look weak. Mm-hmm. And again, in my profession, that's not something you want to portray, that you're weak and kind of not able to do the job. And for whatever reason, in my mind, I make those excuses and I try and justify why I don't share my faith with people. It's like I don't, for whatever reason, and maybe it's a perception that our society paints Jesus as this like docile guy, with the sheep and maybe whatever the reason is, I just make all these excuses to not share that part of my life with people, in my profession.
Yeah, what will people think of me?
Exactly.
Will they think I'm a wuss? Will they think I'm, a Bible thumper?
Exactly.
Or whatever,
Absolutely.
And so it's like, it's just better to not go there.
Yeah.
This is a big one that I see with men. They may be quick to hide behind anger and intimidation. Yeah. I see this when we work with couples, and I'll come into what I call a hot situation, and I will see not always just the man, but more often the man. They'll be quick to go to anger and the demonstration of anger. Yep. Okay, so a pounding of the table, clenching their teeth or their hands, or even punching walls. These kinds of things, that is such a mask.
Yeah.
That is such a mask. And I call men out on this all the time.
Yep.
That you are hiding behind something in a big way. And so you're using your masculinity, your strength, to hopefully put whoever's getting close to opening that door, put them back in their place.
Yep.
Right? Because they're getting ready to expose you.
Yep.
And so if I can intimidate, I'm going to yell a little bit louder. I'm going to slam something. I'm going to use my physical presence to try to get order back to this. Yeah. Right? And so there is such a thing as righteous anger.
Sure.
Right? But when we use it to cover up what we have going on inside of us, it's just not healthy.
Yep.
And so if you got a guy, if you're a man who you go quick to the anger button, I'm just telling you, you got some work to do.
Yeah, and I'll even take that, we talked a little bit before about, with your marriage, like if you're in the middle of a disagreement or argument with your wife and your wife points out that weakness or kind of is exposing that, and you walk out the door, And that
and slam the door.
and slam the door, right? But that anger, because a lot of times I know for me, like if I see a dude that's pissed off and I'm like, I ain't gonna mess with him.
Yeah.
No, I'll back off a little bit. You know, where it takes a stronger man to kind of be like, hey, let's talk through this and let's work this out. Let's turn the volume down a little bit on that anger. But yeah, I mean, I know for me, like that's like Jenny and I are in a disagreement,
Right.
and sometimes it's like I'm not a big yeller. But like if I make that statement, I throw that jab back at her. I kind of almost use that intimidation factor. I know the conversation's over because then she's going to get really upset with me. So the conversation's over, so then I don't get exposed. And that's
But now that she's listening to this show, you're done. You're cooked.
Thanks, Merle.
Well, and I think part of that too, like when I do see a man jump into the intimidation role, because I've done this for a while and I pick up on it pretty quickly. There's a side of me that wants to expose him right away, but really the end goal is not to try to embarrass him. The end goal is to say, hey, let's just talk about that anger thing for a second, and to help them realize what they're doing and what they're trying to hide, because we all benefit when they understand what they're doing, and so trying to help them through that is a big part of our job.
Yep.
How about this one? This is big. You may see them trying to withdraw or hide, and it may be a physical withdrawing or hiding. In other words, they're not going out into social events or opportunities to be around people. Or, like in my case, using an alcohol or some way to kind of cover up. And so early on, again, and I never considered myself an alcoholic because that wasn't my issue, but the anxiety was. And so that was just a real comfortable way. Okay, listen, I feel a need to go out in public or whatever, but a couple beers beforehand sure would just make it a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're a person who feels like, you got to have that, as you called it, that lubrication, to help you get out the door.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Yeah. There's something up with that.
I like how you put the high. This is conversations come around the firehouse, kitchen table, maybe start talking, because we talk about everything. Start talking about, Jesus and guy pokes fun at it, and I'll be the first one to be like, I'm gonna go grab a cup of coffee and sit here and
hide. Yeah,
exactly. So I like how you threw that, withdrawing and hiding, and that's me. I mean, I'm not a big drinker, but that's me. Sometimes I'll use that and just kind of go hide and sit in my little corner and not stand up for what I know to be true in my life. So.
Yeah, and again, then you end up beating yourself up for. Yeah. Are you serious? I mean, that's Peter denying that he knew Jesus.
Oh yeah, 3 times. Yeah, all the time. Yep.
Yeah. How about this one? They may be quick to make fun at the expense of others.
Oh.
All right. I mean, guilty. Oh. You and I both go back and forth. And it's better for me to pick on you than for you to unravel who I could be. Yeah. Right. And so and again, we're not against at all teasing and harassing each other. We think that that's good, fun stuff. But when I see somebody trying to turn the table on me to expose me, how quickly I can, well, how about this? And reflect it back to them and make them look like the idiot.
Yeah,
right.
I may or may not have a couple of guys at work that we do this all the time. We'll be talking about something we messed up on a run. And be like, well, this person they did that. I can't believe they would do that. Like, what were they thinking? And it's like, well, dummy, we were talking about us and our we need to get better at a certain. And it's like, well, that other person did so much worse than we did.
Yeah. Okay, so this next one, this is a phrase, a word that I made up a long time ago. Okay, I must have been bored or something, but I made up this word. I call it a usager.
A usager?
A usager.
You got to explain.
You're a usager, okay? And a usager, I had this person in my life who, and not to expose everything, but they struggled in life, unemployment, some relationship stuff. But whenever you were around them, they were always giving you advice about everything. They seem to know something about everything. They're always, well, you should try this. Well, this is what works, for me, and all this stuff. And I know it was always in good intention. Okay, sure. But usager stands for unsolicited advice giver. Okay, it's a stretch. I know it's a stretch, but I was just like, I didn't ask you for your help. Why are you always telling me how to do stuff? Unsolicited advice giver. You're a usager, man. Quit weighing in on everything, okay? And so, these folks, they walk into a business. They've never known the business before. And next thing you know, they're telling the owner how to run the business. You're like, dude, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. Yep.
Who are you? How's your own lane doing? Okay, and so a lot of times we see people that are just always out there telling other people how to run their show, and their show does not run very smoothly. Yeah. And so that's another sign that I look for of this dude's got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. This next one you have on here, I think I've made mention about this a lot on our podcast. The idea that we need to stop being so serious, and people who have masks and are trying to cover up, they may have poor ability to laugh at themselves, and this is big for me because I know I have a lot of flaws. Jenny knows.
No, you do. I mean,
Jenny knows
doubt.
I have a lot of flaws. But I think when we try and we talked about before that idea of trying to hide behind those masks and try and get away from or resort to alcohol, drugs, whatever. That idea, if we would just sit back and be like, I'm not all that in some. Like, right. I have a lot of flaws, and the ability to sit back and laugh at yourself a little bit goes a really, really long way in, I'm not going to sit here and say I laugh about how I don't share my faith with people at work, but a lot of the flaws that I have when I do suck at something, when I do say something really stupid in front of my kids, and I use that, and it's that idea that it's okay to laugh at yourself. It's okay to find humor in the things that we do or don't do, but that idea that because of those, when we do laugh at it ourselves, there's that point where we have to establish, okay, I sucked at this, I laughed at it. Right. Now it's time to, let's work on fixing, let's work on exposing ourselves. So I think there's a lot of value in laughing at yourself and understanding that it's okay to laugh and to not be so serious all the time.
Yeah, and I'm big on that too. I mean, there's certain issues I can laugh at myself pretty easily and quickly. There's other things a little tougher, a little bit more. I don't want you to bring that one up because I'm not ready to laugh about it. And so. Sometimes you need a little time. If something bad happens or you do something wrong, you may be teasing me right on the moment is I'm not ready for it. And it takes some time. But I think the faster we get to the idea of just kind of laughing at our own silliness or our own weaknesses, it's very freeing. And it also puts the responsibility back onto us to either own it or change it or just let it roll. But it is what it is. Okay. So this next one I think is important too because this is our last one, and this is a little bit different in that it's not an excuse making. It's not, armchair quarterbacking, anything like that. But this is that a guy can come off as being very self-defeating, very much sucking himself into the victim role. Yeah. So they're the kind of the loser at everything. I'm not very good at this.
When people feel sorry for you.
Yeah, and it's a mask of, hey, maybe if I play large enough victim status that somebody's going to feel sorry for me. Yeah. Okay, and so that's a huge exposure of you showing to me that you've got a mask on. When I see you just self-deprecating, eventually I just have to say, dude, come on. I'm done feeling sorry for you. You really, it's time for you to look at what you're doing here. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So those are, again, not all, everybody shows all of these, but maybe one or two of those hits you as that's kind of where I'm at with that. Okay. So, let's take a look at it and see what we need to do. Yeah. All right, so let's go into a little bit of advice. Let's run through this kind of quickly and see, what can we do if we've acknowledged that we've got this mask? Now, where do we go? Yep. Okay.
I mean, I think it's always important, and I sit here and tell you my mask of not showing my true faith at work, and then I'm going to read this verse. But just knowing the strength of our faith, and this is probably part of my problem is do I really fully believe in Jesus, and do I really fully believe in what he can do for my life and what he can do for the other guys I work with? The verse from Philippians 4:13 that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, and that idea that there is no hurdles when it comes to what I want to accomplish as long as I'm doing it with Christ, and that the idea that he's with me, and that I shouldn't be afraid of the repercussions or the outcome by sharing my life and who He is in my life with the people I work with.
Right, because the idea that you're going to be covered, you're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
I mean, when we have faith in Christ, I can do all things through Christ. That you really believe that, like, yeah, you know what? And I do think it's important that you realize it may not come out the way you want initially.
Sure,
but you will be carried through the problem or the situation, and so to trust that God has your back on this. We did a previous show, just trusting in God's timing and in God's way. So Philippians 4:13 is a great place to start as strong dads, as Christian men. Okay, wait, take your mask off and trust. Let's trust right off the bat that this is going to work out. The second thing that I put on here in terms of advice to all of our strong dads, and this was what I talked about earlier with the anxiety disorder that I had that I dealt with, is admitting that weakness, admitting that condition, that mask, admitting it. The faster you get to admitting it, the faster you are on to self-improvement and to growth. And so actually verbalizing it, like, I struggle with this, or I'm afraid of this being exposed. The faster I get to that, it's no longer in the closet. I don't have to be secretive about it. It doesn't have to be in the dark. And so that is huge. And it's, in all parts of our life, whether we're talking about, well, I am an alcoholic, or I struggle with this, or whatever. Exposure.
And I think it was a few episodes when Rob Strobel came and talked about one of the roles of a strong dad is actually being weak at times. And knowing that we all have weaknesses, and those weaknesses that we have, we need to expose them, because that's how we can become stronger. And an idea that if we just hold on to those weaknesses that we have, we don't expose them, especially, you don't expose them to your wife. How are you ever going to really grow in your relationship with your wife through Christ? Like that, we all have weaknesses. We have to expose them before we can get better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the next one is, to understand what fear and anxiety is, to put fear and anxiety into its proper place. So here's kind of what I mean by that. Not all fear and anxiety is bad.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, the fear of the Lord is one we are called to have, right? A respect of the Lord. I have the opportunity to know a good number of people in the special forces. And one of the cool thing about hanging around these dudes when I get a chance to do this is, I mean, these are special dudes, right? These
the best of the best, right?
They're best of the best. They're tough. They're, but the more you get to know them, the more fun you have with them. Because one of the things that these guys are trained to do, besides being tough and all that, is to expose weakness. Because expose their own. Because that's how they are trained to get better. And so they really do. It's fun to hang around them because they expose each other really quickly. Not in a sexual way. They expose, like, no, I suck at this, or I'm not good at that, or this is what I do, or, and calling each other out. But all with the idea that they're trying to get each other better.
That iron sharpens iron. But there's still going to be friction involved in that idea that we should be, we talked about this before, that find a group of other strong dads and use that to your benefit, that other dudes should be able to expose you, and you can't take offense to it. You need to know that when those guys are calling you out for your weaknesses or for the mask that you're putting on, that idea that they should be doing it coming from a good place where you can then build into each other, and then holy cow, I mean, the result and the fruit that comes from that
is huge. And some of these fears and anxieties are healthy, right? I mean, because we're there to stay alive. There's a healthy fear of things, and so to act like I'm afraid of nothing, that's just garbage. We all have these natural kind of like fears, and no matter how tough you are, some of it is self-preservation. Okay. But putting that in its proper place and its influence in your life, and then we can start to use it to really live a full life.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I would be sitting here and lying to you if I told you that I'm not afraid of fire. Like, that's my job. I have a great, healthy respect for fire. And because of that little bit of fear, that little bit of doubt that comes along with that, my training, when I'm not in there, has to be so much better. Like I want real world experience to try and make sure that when I do get into those fires, those situations, that yes, although that fear is there, but I also have so much confidence in the training that I've done to prepare myself for that.
To override the fear.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. So then at that point, when you've identified the fear, you recognize that the level of fear that you have is unhealthy, so you've put the mask on. At that point, it's like, okay, now it's time to do what it takes to get the mask off.
Yep.
And so when I say do what it takes, I mean actually seeking out the help or the practices that it takes. If you need medical help for something you've been trying to hide, it's time to get out and get it, all right? Rather than to hide from it. If you need help for an addiction, if you need help for a mental illness, if you need help for something, it's time to go get it, right?
Yeah.
It's time to ask for help from those that you need. If you need to go talk to a counselor or a coach or a doctor or a priest, it's your job. If you're going to be a strong dad, it is your job to go out and be active in getting it done. Okay.
Yeah.
If somebody else is doing it for you, if like your wife is having to call to get you help, you're screwing up.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what your wife is doing for you, but it needs to come out of you.
It'll mean so much more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and your opportunity for healing will be so much greater because if your wife's driving it, you haven't bought into it yet.
Yep.
Okay. And so taking that initiative to own it and then take the first steps to actually take the mask off.
Yep. And like I may mention before, just starting with the inner circle, starting with a group of other guys that are believing and want to see improvement in you. It's easy to get around a bunch of dudes that can just sit there and bitch and complain and continue to make it a vicious cycle where there is no improvement. But getting with other guys that want to help see you improve, help remove those masks, those weaknesses, expose them, and then kind of work together to fix them and become better, become stronger. Yeah,
and so that's that inner circle, and we talk about a band of brothers. That's really important. But I know. People who maybe there are guys that don't have much of a guy group that they hang around. Your inner circle are the people that you give permission to weigh in on your life.
Sure.
I give my wife permission to weigh in on my life. I give my own siblings permission to weigh in on my life. I give close friends permission to weigh in on my life. That's my inner circle. And it may be a group of guys, it may not. But you have to then allow those people to weigh in. And again, there are rules of respect for weighing in. And we only give permission to those who are going to follow those rules of respect. We're not there to be ripped in shreds and be left out to dry there. Okay. Yeah. We're there to be built up as well as we could do the same into somebody else's life. So getting that inner circle, aware of what you're doing and working through that is critical.
Yep.
All right. So all this stuff, all right, the mask has now been ripped off your face, Kyle. Oh, man, I can't believe what I'm looking at right now.
Not pretty. Not pretty.
How about a challenge for our guys?
Yeah, so we are in 2020. We're a new decade, a new year. Let's take some time. If anything we had talked about kind of smacked you in the face, start to take some time to really assess yourself and to find out what mask do you have. In order to move past a problem, you have to actually establish that there is a problem. So let's look at ourselves. Let's look at those masks that we do put on. Let's see and talk it out. Expose yourself. And not expose yourself in a sexual way again. But yeah, so you have to expose yourself. You have to realize that you need to find an inner circle, some people that want to walk alongside you, some people want to build into you, and let's work on getting rid of those masks, and let's work on just being real and know that you have flaws, as does everybody else. I know I do. You definitely do, Merle.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
So let's expose them, and let's work on kind of removing those and minimizing the times when those masks do kind of pop up.
All right. Yeah, good stuff. All right. So we want to close things out. If there's anything that we can do here through Strong Dads at Rock Solid Families, please do not hesitate to contact me. You can directly reach me at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org, or feel free to give us a call at 812-576-7625. So yeah, reach out there. Also, we have our Strong Dads class that is running, which is a 8-week session. and that runs actually starting January 11th, so it's going to be hot on the trail here, and we'll run 8 weeks, Saturday morning, 7:30 to 9 o'clock. We do a 45-minute workout followed by a 45-minute Bible study for dads. We have a lot of fun with that, so don't be intimidated if you are, one, not in shape, and two, don't know Bible, because that's not what we're about. We're about just being raw and pouring into each other and challenging each other and trying to rip those masks off. So
for sure,
feel free to come on out and join us for that opportunity. Okay, so Kyle, how about you close us out?
Yeah, so thanks so much for Kramer's Beer House and Mansfield Insurance Agency coming alongside us, believing in what we believe in, and go out there and be some strong dads.
Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency in Bright, Indiana for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. Established in 1981, the Mansfield Insurance Agency has been dedicated to the individuals and businesses in Bright, Indiana, serving clients throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.